Well, I was thinking of moving on from this coronavirus stuff, in part because all of these coronavirus videos are actually really hurting this channel. I mean, ignoring the demonetization and all that sort of thing, they're clearly starting to hurt the visibility of this channel, which is crazy. The way that, the guy who made the video calling all this out in early February is the guy that Google purges from their search engine. There's my video from February. Let's go put that into the Google search engine and see what we come up with. And it doesn't appear. Okay, maybe not specific enough. Let's add in there Thunderfoot and see what that brings up. And you get something on Reddit, nothing about me. Then you go for videos, the exact bloody title, and it doesn't exist. You have to go through pages of this. Like, and there, look, that's me. Apart from, that's not me. That's another website that's just embedded my video. Now, I don't begrudge what I've done here, because at least I can look back and say, well, I might have only made a small contribution, but when I did, it was pretty much on the money. I mean, that early video that I was talking about in early February, that was made when virtually all the cases in the world were in China. They were in the 40,000 cases range at that time. And cases in other countries around the world were in single digits. It was hard to find the data at that point. There weren't these huge collated databases like there are with Johns Hopkins now. Yeah, there we go. So, I mean, that would give you a 52% sort of infection rate near the beginning. Left unchecked, you can almost infect the entire planet like that in about 2 months. And even at that, you could have said that I was late to the party in that the World Health Organization had declared a public health emergency of international concern over a week earlier at the end of January. The conclusion, if you believe the China data, was that this thing was dangerous.
Aurak, have you been listening to all this?
With interest.
What do you think?
I think you're quite right. A degree of apprehension is not inappropriate.
It was instantly obvious from the data that this thing had the potential to infect the entire world in a few months with a rough death toll of about 200 million. Add to this the fact that China had just quarantined a city the size of New York City and a state the size of California, and you could see that they were taking it seriously. However, if you thought that China were lying to minimize the danger, to minimize the risk, to make it sound like they were doing better than they were, then this thing was a horror story of disaster movie proportions and should have been greeted with instant quarantines around the world. However, with few cases outside of China, it looked for the moment like the world had dodged a bullet. Yeah, I was shifting uncomfortably in my chair at this point. You know, in the early days, you only tend to find the serious cases of the virus, say 1 in 10 or something. And with the spread rate that had been seen in country after country outside of China that was the same as the China spread rate, this meant that every 3 days of inaction would double the final death toll. About a month later, Italy, the hotspot of Europe, would eventually declare the first lockdown on March the 9th. And everywhere else in Europe was just sleepwalking into this. The US, about this time, had had about 1,000 cases of the virus, and the president had just declared a state of emergency, but didn't actually do anything else. Now, I'm not an expert on infectious diseases, but I know the maths that describes them. And the analysis that I'd done a month earlier showed that this thing had to be taken seriously. This was not a complicated analysis. The reason I bring it up, of course, is not that they should have responded to my analysis, but if it was obvious to me, it must have been obvious to loads of infectious disease experts around the world. And you would have hoped that someone in politics would have listened to them. But it was still a further 2 weeks after this, a period of inaction that would increase the death toll in Europe by a factor of about 20, that almost all the rest of the countries in Europe went into a lockdown. The president, in the meantime, had been saying that the coronavirus really wasn't so serious and that it was all under control.
We have it very well under control.
We pretty much shut it down coming in from China. You know, in April, supposedly it dies with the hotter weather.
People are getting better. They're all getting better.
And the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear
And you'll be fine.
they're going to have vaccines, I think, relatively soon.
We're talking about very small numbers in the United States.
Our numbers are lower than just about anybody. It's really working out, and a lot of good things are going to happen. It's going to go away. Yeah, we're doing great. Our country is doing so great.
I'm dead right on this. The coronavirus is the common cold.
This is a flu. This is like a flu. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
And of course, Fox News was incredibly diligent in spotting the potential hazard of this infectious disease early. A true monument to competence in journalism.
Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz mocked concerns about the spread of the virus by wearing a gas mask on Capitol Hill.
It is being contained. And do you not think it's being contained?
It's a virus like the flu. All the talk about coronavirus being so much more deadly doesn't reflect reality.
The national left-wing media playing up fears of the coronavirus.
This is impeachment all over again, complete with a whistleblower to complain about our Health and Human Services Committee, right? I want to remind everyone that the CDC estimates that this year's seasonal flu has resulted in roughly 34 million cases and 20,000 deaths in the United States alone. The seasonal flu. So why the melodrama on such an agitated scale right now? Why are the markets reacting like this? I'll give you two words. Donald Trump. And the media doesn't like him.
And the facts are actually pretty reassuring, but you never know it watching all this stuff.
Sky is falling because we have a few dozen cases of coronavirus on a cruise ship. I am far more concerned with stepping on a used heroin needle than I am getting the coronavirus, but maybe that's just me.
One of the things you can do if you're healthy, you and your family, it's a great time to just go out, go to a local restaurant.
Yeah.
Likely you can get in easily.
And this was President Trump at a rally merely 10 days before the state of emergency was declared.
And we had a great meeting today with a lot of the great companies, and they're going to have vaccines, I think, relatively soon. And they're going to have something that makes you better, and that's going to actually take place, we think, even sooner. So it's a lot of good things are happening. And early actions have really been proven to be 100% right. We went out, we're doing everything in our power to keep the sick and infected people from coming into our country. We're working on that very hard. But there are fringe globalists who would rather keep our borders open than keep our infection. And think of it, keep all of the infection, let it come in. Over the last long period of time, the flu, the common flu, you know this, right? From 27,000 to 70,000 people get infected, and many people die. Nobody knew that. I didn't know that. 3-4 weeks ago, I was sitting down, I said, what do we lose with the regular flu? They said, about 27,000 minimum, goes up to 70, sometimes even 80. One year it went up to 100,000 people. I said, nobody told me that. Nobody knows that. The United States is right now ranked by far #1 in the world for preparedness. Earlier today, when I met with the pharmaceutical companies, things were discussed and learned honestly. The media didn't know. Nobody knew. They've never heard this before. But we're going to reduce the severity of what's happening, the duration of the virus. We discussed all of these things. We will bring these therapies to market as rapidly as possible. And I have to say, with a thriving economy the way it is, we have the greatest health system on earth. The renewal of American strength over the last 3 years means at times of challenge, we are the best prepared to rise to any occasion. No country is better equipped than America to handle new threats, and no people are more skilled, talented, tough, or driven than Americans.
A month had gone by since the US had declared a state of emergency, and the number of cases in the US had skyrocketed from about 500 to almost 1 million.
the level that we've had in our country is very low, and those people are getting better, or we think that in almost all cases, the better are getting. We have a total of 15. Over the last 10 years, we've lost 360,000. These are people that have died from the flu, from what we call the flu. Hey, did you get your flu shot? They did a study, comprehensive, the country's best and worst prepared for an epidemic. And the United States is now, we're rated number one. We're rated number one for being prepared. This is a list of different countries. I don't want to get in your way, especially since you do such a good job. This is a list of the different countries. The United States is rated number one, most prepared.
Well, that's good to know, especially since now the United States is the most infected country in the world. It's maybe just occurring to me. It's just a suggestion. I might be wrong here. But having the best prepared country in the world for an epidemic and turning it into the most infected country, the number one most infected country in the world, might mean that you just maybe didn't have the best, the most powerful of leadership. Naturally, I draw the inspiration here from a tweet from one Donald Trump. Leadership. Whatever happens, you're responsible. If it doesn't happen, you're responsible.
Earlier this week that the lag in testing was in fact a failing. Do you take responsibility for that? And when can you guarantee that every single American who needs a test will be able to have a test? What's the date of that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
Now, doubtless, at this point, there will be a lot of people reaching for their keyboards saying how terrible it is that I'm just bashing Trump and Orange Man bad and all that sort of thing. But I want you to do me a favor. Okay? I want you to tell me what Trump has done in handling the coronavirus crisis that is worthy of praise. Tell me, what is there to praise in how Trump has handled this? So, continuing. I wonder how the president's opinions on the United States being the best prepared, the number one country in the world, might have changed.
They were broken. They were obsolete. And you remember we inherited a broken system. We inherited a broken system.
The United States is right now ranked by far number one in the world for preparedness. Earlier today, when I met with the pharmaceutical companies, things were discussed and learned honestly. The media didn't know. Nobody knew. They've never heard this before.
Okay, that's not really compatible with what he was saying a month or so ago. What else?
WHO, that's the World Health Organization, they missed the call. World Health got it wrong. I mean, they got it very wrong. In many ways, they were wrong. I'm not happy with the World Health Organization.
So the WHO issued a worldwide health emergency 2 weeks before you were telling us how you had it totally under control in the United States.
They're recovering. Of the 15 people, the original 15 as I call them, 8 of them have returned to their homes, to stay in their homes until fully recovered. 1 is in the hospital, and 5 have fully recovered. But we have a total of 15 people, and they're in a process of recovering, with some already having fully recovered. The reality is that the WHO failed to adequately obtain, vet, and share information in a timely and transparent fashion. It would have been so easy to be truthful.
So it's their fault for not telling you sooner? When 2 weeks after they told you, you were saying that everything was fine? He started promoting a drug called hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine. Based on what I see, it could be a game changer. Hydroxychloroquine, it showed very encouraging early results, really encouraging. A friend of mine told me he got better because of the use of that drug.
So the hydroxychloroquine is something that I have been pushing very hard. I got the very early approval from the FDA.
Hydroxychloroquine seems to be working. I don't know medicine from cosmology, all right? But the fact of the matter is it's working.
Now, sadly, if you know even the most rudimentary things about viruses, you'll know that they're exceptionally difficult to treat. You would have known that it takes years of research to come up with drugs that are effective at inhibiting viruses like, say, the HIV virus that causes AIDS. The chances of a killer virus coming along and you just having a drug on the shelf to treat it. It's kind of comparable to just going through your trash and finding a winning lottery ticket.
Chloroquine, that's a cheap anti-malaria drug, may be effective in treating coronavirus.
What if there's already a cheap and widely available medication that's on the market to treat the virus?
The drug was extensively talked up on Fox News.
It has shown surprising promise for treatment of coronavirus.
I've been telling you for a week about hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Hydrochloroquine.
We're talking about hydroxychloroquine.
In a lot of ways, hydroxychloroquine is the ideal medicine.
I mean, Steve, this could be a game changer.
At this point, it's come across as pretty much of a game changer.
There's mounting evidence tonight that hydroxychloroquine may work.
Hydroxychloroquine is now looking more and more like an important tool in treating this virus.
Where folks didn't seem to understand simpler things, like the mortality rate of the virus is about 5% if you just take a look at the macroscopic numbers in the world today. That means out of 100 people who get the virus, 95% of them are just expected to get better. That means that if I give people who have contracted the coronavirus homeopathic pills, let's make this even better. If I give them gummy bears to treat them, I would expect to get a 95% cure rate out of it.
In my open, I put in a sound of the woman who was a Democrat from Detroit, a Michigan representative, who said, thank God for Donald Trump even mentioning this. And once I got on the hydroxy, I was fine.
Well, your open was spot on.
Is there something else
politicized. No, it's just, come on. It's like the never Trumpers. It's like, if he's for it, we got to be against it.
I actually haven't heard a bad story, you want to know the truth. Normally you'd hear some good ones, some bad ones, and you'd still give it a shot. I haven't heard a bad story.
Well, yes, and if you'd have treated the virus with gummy bears, you wouldn't have heard any bad stories either. You see, dead people don't tend to tell bad stories. So the 95% who took the gummy bears and got better would have told you they took gummy bears and they got better. Some of them, who were just about to turn the tide anyway, would have got miraculously better very quickly.
This drug that you and I have talked about, hydroxychloroquine, talked about it with Dr. Grace, is already being used. And one patient was described as Lazarus, getting up after he was like on death's door, and they started getting a protocol of hydroxychloroquine at Lenox Hill, and it's suddenly like Lazarus up from the grave. That's an actual case.
This point seems to have been lost on the hosts of Fox News. Further, drugs by their very nature tend to be poisons. They just selectively poison what ails you more than it poisons you. This is why taking all possible drugs, on the basis that, what do you got to lose, is a very bad idea.
What do you have to lose? Take it.
It's an especially bad idea if you're giving those drugs to people who are already sick anyway. It therefore wasn't a surprise when the early studies of the virus started being published in late April. Now, this work hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, but there are two of them. One of them is a meta-analysis that looked at 4 other studies and found no significant benefits from the drug. The other tested the drug on US veterans. Hydroxychloroquine almost doubled the rate at which the veterans died.
What the hell do you have to lose?
Calibrate being enthusiastic and not playing doctor.
Because I want people to live. And I'm seeing people dying. And I've seen people that are going to die without it. And you know the expression, when that's happening, they should do it. What really do we have to lose? What do you have to lose? Take it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much in the way of miraculously getting better here. And it's because of this risk of death due to an erratic heartbeat that the FDA has issued a warning about not using this drug outside of a hospital.
As side effects, none of which are death, by the way.
And while my natural instinct is to look at small number statistics with a degree of skepticism, you can say with absolute certainty that this is no miracle drug. And of course, this was always the expected conclusion. The number of new viruses that emerge and you just happen to have on the shelf a drug that will treat it. Well, it's not impossible. It's just, it's never happened before.
Watching people in the media talk down a potentially life-saving medicine because a politician they don't like has endorsed it is probably the most shameful thing I, as someone who's done this for 29 years, have ever seen.
You know, it would be like sort of discovering the HIV virus and then finding that Advil kills it. But there are still a bunch of diehard fans out there who seem to think that zinc is the silver bullet. Zinc is what makes it all work. Really, guys, zinc. A body of tens of thousands of proteins, not to mention different RNA, DNA, sugars, glycosylations, and all that sort of thing. And you think that zinc, a spherical ion, will magically, selectively target the virus?
Tonic water and zinc. A St. Louis chiropractor is saying he's recommending this combination during the coronavirus.
You really think that 4.5 billion years of an evolutionary arms race between the viruses and the organisms, that evolution at no point found out that all it had to do was add a little zinc?
Chiropractor Dr. Eric Naputi runs Naputi Wellness Center in St. Louis, but his Facebook video about the coronavirus has gone far beyond his regular patients, with more than 13 million views.
But if it makes you feel any better, I actually do some fairly fundamental research. In fact, my earliest paper in Nature was actually on zinc chloride, which was a fascinating paper in which all I really did for it was prepare the samples, which required distilling $250,000 worth of isotopic zinc chloride, which was absolutely fascinating to do. And if you're interested, I'll make a video about it sometime, because I knew at the time that never again would I do an experiment on that sort of scale, which was a little sad at the time. Now, I've also done work on the structure of ions in solution too, like the magnesium and the zinc ion. Both ions have the same charge and are almost exactly the same size. So, from the perspective of molecular dynamics, they're identical. Now, clearly, this ain't so in biochemistry. You know, the magnesium ion tends to bind to things like ATP, you know, the energy currency of the body, while zinc doesn't. And zinc does all sorts of other things, like regulate insulin, a role in which magnesium is ineffective in. But apparently, all of these studies into hydroxychloroquine have been sabotaged by doctors who, for some bizarre reason, don't want it to work. Apparently, they just lack the knowledge of the internet that you've just got to add zinc, all but dispensed by people who insist front and center on telling you that they're a doctor and wearing some sort of lab coat or something.
And take at least 50 to 100 milligrams of zinc. I'd say that again, 50 to 100 milligrams of zinc, okay? Do that every day as a preventative.
Naputi does tell his viewers his disclaimer is this is not medical advice.
It's a well-known homeopathic treatment, and the side effects of this thing are absolutely little to none.
But medical doctors say
really
even
well.
if there's no side effects, there's also no evidence that it will prevent coronavirus whatsoever.
Well, I've never made one claim at all telling anybody that any of these nutrients cures or prevents coronavirus.
Well, for the guys who think that that crap makes any difference whatsoever, fine. I've been working on ions in solution and their role in biochemistry for some 20 plus years. Really, to find someone who knows more about ions in solution, you'd be looking for quite some time. But whatever, for those who think that it's important, yeah, you can say that you got this information from Dr. Mason. Look, let's just take the fact that the Trump administration is no longer pushing this drug and read into it the obvious conclusion that, yeah, they can see the writing on the wall on this one, which was always the expected conclusion. But just imagine what would have happened if rather than, say, ordering 29 million doses of homeopathic pills, hydroxychloroquine.
Millions of units ordered. Bayer is one of the companies, as you know, big company, very big, very great company. Millions of units are ordered. We have purchased and we have stockpiled 29 million pills of the hydroxychloroquine, 29 million. A lot of drugstores have them by prescription, and also, and they're not expensive. Also, we're sending them to various labs, our military, we're sending them to the hospitals, we're sending them all over.
After all, what have you got to lose? Imagine that the president had taken similar action to secure protective clothing for frontline workers, or had ordered 29 million coronavirus tests. Given that to date, America has only performed about 5 million tests. Now, quite why folks would be looking to the guy who predicted so confidently that this would all just go away in April, and that America was doing great because they only had 15 cases and they would soon be down to 0. I'm not so sure. But he is the President of the United States, and he's got a over 40% approval rating among Americans who think that he's doing a good job here. So it's probably important to explain why trying to kill the virus by putting lights inside the body is a bad idea.
Supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
Now, the president has since gone on to explain that he was just being sarcastic here.
Are you encouraging You're not encouraging Americans to...
No, of course, no. Of course, that was... interior-wise, it said sarcastically. It was put in the form of a question to a group of extraordinarily hostile people, namely the fake news media.
Statement doesn't comport with reality. You know, you can definitely be seen there asking your loyal doctor to look into testing this on people.
Supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that?
Who I've got to admit, I empathize with, in that, you know, this is a woman who has spent decades of her life studying at the highest level, being asked questions that most kids would realize are really dumb by the most powerful man in the world.
By injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that.
Oh yes, it'd certainly be interesting to check that.
So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with.
Medical doctors to check.
But it sounds interesting to me.
So in order to know how to kill a virus, you need to know what one is.
To fight the bug, we must understand the bug. We can ill afford another Klendathu.
Would you like to know more?
There's really not a lot to a virus. There's some proteins on the surface, a sort of lipid bilayer that forms a membrane, and some RNA on the inside. And if that comes in contact with your cells, it sort of injects the RNA inside your cells, and then your cells can't tell that RNA from any other RNA, so it just keeps replicating whatever that RNA tells it to, which is basically to create more viruses. So all you got to do is rupture that cell membrane, and the viruses can't get inside your cells anymore. You kill the virus. The thing is that stuff that you can do that will destroy that virus membrane will destroy your cell membranes as well, because they're all very similar lipid bilayers. Indeed, when the virus leaves, it's made up of the same stuff as your cell membranes. So for instance, UV light promotes the oxidation of these membranes, which causes them to fail. Downside is, of course, that UV light will also promote the oxidation of your cell membranes, which will kill all of your cells. That's bad news. Or it promotes the cross-linking of base pairs in things like DNA and RNA. Also fatal for cells and bad news. I mean, UV light also causes proteins to permanently cross-link. It's basically what gives you sunburn. But, you know, there are ways that you can use this in medicine. So, for instance, one of the ways in which you can treat cancer is you basically irradiate the cancer with high-energy particles or photons, much higher energy than UV light. And this kills these cells locally, and then your body just reabsorbs the dead tissue, kind of like an internal burn. Similarly, alcohol and surfactants mess with the hydrophobic-hydrophilic balance that keeps these membranes stable, which kills the virus. Unfortunately, it does the same to your cell membranes. Now, believe it or not, this is actually also a treatment for small cancers. You basically take pure alcohol and inject it into these small cancers, which kills most of the cells there, and your body again reabsorbs this dead tissue at a later date. Again, it only works with small cancers. So why can't you just do this with your lungs? Fill your lungs with disinfectant or sterilizing concentrations of alcohol. Well, it would be very effective at destroying any stray virus down there.
And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Sadly, it would also destroy all the cells on the wall of your lungs. And leading scientists seem to be kind of united here that you need lungs to live. Injecting disinfectants would also eventually get to your lungs. Sadly, it would also destroy all the cells that it comes into contact along the way. The blood cells, liver, kidney, brain cells, and eventually, yes, it would kill the virus. But on the bright side, it would be quite effective at killing the virus. So I guess in order to remain fair and balanced, I have to compliment the president on the good idea for killing the virus. And I'm sure if he were here, he would be telling you how unfair it is that the media never covers this, instead focusing on the negatives, like this minor side effect of death.
Let's all try to remain calm. Open it or it'll be dead before it hits the floor.
Oh, Sarah, you negative Nelly. Don't you mean this coronavirus will be cured by the time he hits the floor? Likewise, you could blast the body with ultraviolet light, from the inside somehow.
So, supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
And this would be like getting a severe sunburn all over your lungs, which has about 40 times the surface area of your skin. As a result, your lungs would be destroyed, and the oxygen transport properties of your lungs would also be destroyed, and you would die of lack of oxygen a few minutes later.
I'll kill you. Only if I die. Yes, that's what killing you means.
Yet we still have to face the fact that the President Trump here has a 45% approval rating. Now, to many of these folks, it's true they love Trump, but I just want to suggest this to them. That he might not be the best guy to look to for advice in a pandemic. I mean, hell, I've never been particularly hot on science deniers. The kind of thing. I've never felt particularly comfortable about those who promote anti-vaxxer stuff.
Just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic.
Or promote climate change denial.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
And the whole thing about running a scammy university. Seriously, can you ever imagine me throwing in with the anti-vaxxer or the climate change denier? You might as well hold out for me throwing in with the creationists or the scam starters. The sad thing is, I put a lot of effort into making these videos, and it really does suck to see my work just get purged like this. For what? The crime of being, well, let's be honest, pretty much on the money from the very start. Whilst others were promoting all sorts of crazy bull. Now, honestly, I don't mind taking one for the team here and keeping on making videos like this on this channel, because I know that a lot of people find them useful. So let me know in the comments below what you think, if you'd like me to keep making videos like this on this channel. And of course, I am very grateful to those who support this channel through Patreon, as without it, it really would suck to see the income on the channel about halve in about a month.